Holding and hosting this conversation, a very important global conversation called Global Policy Water First. And under the vision of Dr. Shelley Ostroff, working with Gidon Bromberg, an extraordinary panel has been assembled, and right across the world, different passion areas, different expertise, but with one thing in common, and that is a passion for the protection of water, and also a sense that really rallying around water can be the difference that makes all the difference as our world strives for more unity, more wholeness, and more healing on the planet. So I'm very, very excited. We have 8 esteemed and distinguished guests to hear from. I'll just briefly read out each of them who are with us here, and then we'll go through one by one. Gidon Bromberg from EcoPeace Middle East. We'll be hearing from Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati ji from Rishikesh in India. Dr. Anne Polina from the Lower Fitzroy River in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. Dr. Tebaldo Vinciguerra from the Holy See in the Vatican. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from the United States. Juanita Ariza Guzman, and Juanita is coming from Colombia. Linda Tucker is based in South Africa, and Dr. Shelley Ostroff in Jerusalem. So it's fair to say we are spanning the world. We are spanning the watery world we call home. And to kick us off in this very important conversation, global policy, water first, is Gidon Bromberg. And Gidon is an excellent person to begin this conversation, because for more than 25 years, in fact, close to 30 years, Gidon with his organization EcoPeace Middle East are really leading the charge on how water can be a unifier even in the most complicated environment, one of the most complicated environment politically and religiously and environmentally on our world. Gidon Bromberg is the co-founder and 26-year Israeli director of EcoPeace Middle East. EcoPeace is a unique regional organization that brings together Jordanian, Palestinian, and Israeli environmentalists to promote sustainable development and advance peace efforts in the Middle East. Gidon Bromberg, welcome back to World Unity Week. It's great to have you with us, and we're going to begin with your opening remarks, Gidon.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you for the opportunity today. And I'm really grateful to the work together with Shelley that's brought this incredible group of experts from multidisciplinary fields to speak about the importance of what we're describing, what we're calling water first. And I want to bring the perspective of what focusing on water first for the Middle East, and particularly for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, could mean. And in order to do that, I need to go back a little bit in history. I need to go back 25 years, 26 years, when the Oslo Accords were negotiated. At that time, there was only natural water water that we find in surface water like the Jordan River, or in groundwater. We have a famous aquifer called the Mountain Aquifer, shared between Israel and the West Bank, a coastal aquifer shared between Israel and Gaza, and the Jordan River system shared between Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. And when Israel and the PLO came to negotiate the notion of finally making peace, water was at that time seen as a difficult issue to solve, because there was only natural water, and therefore water was seen pretty much as a zero-sum game, where moving or allowing greater access for Palestinians to obtain their water rights would have meant back in 94, 95, when Oslo was negotiated, that there would be less water available for Israel, and in particularly for Israeli farmers. And had an agreement, a final agreement on water being resolved. At that time, most likely every road to Jerusalem would have been blocked by Israeli farmers who would have protested the loss of water that would have resulted for their agricultural activities. And for that reason, because water at that time was seen as very finite, water was put aside as a final status issue, together with other difficult issues to solve in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict: Jerusalem, settlements, refugees, and borders and security. So 5 final status issues were put aside with the idea that within 5 years, an agreement would be reached through striking a deal. Sort of one side would be generous on the water issue, the other side would be generous, as an example, on the refugee issue, and we could move forward on a final agreement. Well, quite sadly, we know that, and in that interim 5-year period, roughly 75% of the shared natural waters remained under Israeli control for Israeli benefit, and only 25% of that shared natural water was being allocated to the Palestinians. So an unsustainable division. I mean, a division that was seen from the outset that it would be interim, it would last a maximum of 5 years, but it would be replaced by a new agreement. Whether it would be a 50-50 sharing or a 60-40 sharing would really depend on negotiations between the parties, with each side arguing the case as to why they might be deserving of more water, but quite definitely an expectation that a fairer share of those natural waters between Israelis and Palestinians would happen within those 5 years. Quite sadly, as we all know, a final agreement 26 years later has not been reached. And although technology has developed quite dramatically to expand the water pie, mostly led by ingenuity on the Israeli side, Israel is the world leader in treating sewage. About half the agriculture in the country today is no longer grown on fresh water. It's grown on treated wastewater. And that, combined with the development of new membrane technology for desalination, has dramatically increased the amount of water that can be available. And that desalination technology has developed the possibilities to manufacture water at very competitive prices, whereby, again, back in 94, 95, the cost of desalinating a cubic meter of water was $2. Today, it's down to 44 cents. And if it can be powered through renewable energy, which is what Ecopeace proposes, then we can even get to cheaper prices. And that is very, very much compares to the cost of even pumping natural water from the deep mountain aquifer, because you need electricity there too, and that can easily cost you more than $1. So the underlying reason as to why water was put aside as a final status issue 26 years later is no longer relevant. Water is, in fact, today the most solvable of all the Israeli-Palestinian final status issues. And what has prevented us from moving first on water, so a water first effort, what's prevented us from moving forward, it's more been the political mindset of the respective parties, the government of Israel, the Palestinian Authority, but also the international community. This desire, and you can sort of understand the desire that we want to solve everything, and we don't want to continue to move in a piecemeal fashion, but that desire of all or nothing has actually left us with nothing. And maybe that was fine to try and experiment for another several years, but 26 years later, since the signing of the Oslo Accords, this paradigm of all or nothing has left us with nothing, has left us with no movement on any of the final status issues, and especially the water issue, which is today most solvable. So at Ecopeace, we've been at the forefront of a water first campaign. And our message for a water first campaign is that, well, by moving forward on water, which is today very, very viable, Palestinians can increase access to their fair share of natural water. Israelis would have to reduce their pumping, but they can replenish that water loss through increased desalination or increased treatment of sewage water at very competitive prices. So in fact, we gain a win-win. There would be more water in every Palestinian home as a result of a water first deal. And first and foremost, the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah would gain from that success. But more than that, moving forward on water first would help convince the public on both sides that there is a partner to peace. By improving the water reality, we improve the livelihoods of every Palestinian, certainly throughout the West Bank, where most of that groundwater would go. There would also be an incentive to treat more of the Palestinian sewage that currently flows into Israel and is a source of animosity on the Israeli side. So more water being allocated to the Palestinian side, treatment of sewage that would be reduced in its flow on the Israeli side would produce a win-win result for both sides, would show that there is a partner to peace. It would help convince the public, because 26 years after the negotiation of the Oslo Accords, it's no wonder that the public on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, have little hope, have little belief that there will ever be peace, because for the last 26 years, the paradigm has been either all or nothing. And since it's been nothing, then our public has seen no progress on any final status issue. So moving forward first on water sends a powerful message that peace is possible, that we have a partner, that we can improve the reality on the ground. And if we have a partner for one final status issue, then why wouldn't we have a partner for all other final status issues as well? Jerusalem, borders, security, etc. So water first in the Middle East, in the Israeli-Palestinian context, can be an absolute game changer. It can change the narrative, change the mindset, change the welfare. That is the power of water. And perhaps like no other substance on earth, I know it's a cliche, but water is life. If we can make more water flow, have clean water available for every Palestinian and every Israeli, that's a message for our own region and a message for all of the world to take forward on, to move forward on. So they're my opening remarks, and I look forward to hearing the remarks of so many of the other distinguished speakers. And then most importantly, in the second half, to go into a deep discussion of how we can build on the water first concept, that water is life, to indeed help promote life and fairness and justice for all over the globe. Thank you, Ben.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gidon. Thank you for those the energetic and really inspirational work that you're doing there of orientating this intrinsically complicated situation in the Middle East to water and offering a pathway forward, a blue pathway forward with the Green Blue deal, which perhaps we'll hear a little bit more from a little bit later on. Now we're going to go to Sadhvi Saraswati, and I have the video here. This is a message from Sadhvi, who does incredible work with the Wash Alliance. I'll give a brief introduction to Sadhvi. And amazing that Sadhvi is participating. She's in California at the moment, so the time zone is not suitable for her, but she has very kindly sent in this message. Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati ji is a renowned spiritual leader and motivational speaker based in Rishikesh, India. Originally from Los Angeles, California, and a graduate of Stanford University, Sadhvi ji has lived on the banks of the sacred Ganga River in the lap of the Himalayas for nearly 25 years, engaged in spiritual service, wisdom teaching, sacred action, and deep spiritual practice. So let us listen and hear from Sadhviji and her message on this subject.
Water is life. From the 9 months that we spend in the nutrient-rich womb of our mothers, to that which makes up the vast majority of our physical body, to that which we inhale and exhale along with the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, to that which runs beneath our land as our groundwater and into our rivers and our streams, running beside us into the oceans that connect us, to that which quenches our thirst, irrigates our fields. Water is life. And yet, tragically, these days and in coming days, it's too frequently a source of illness and death more than health and life. More people suffer and die every year from lack of clean water than from all forms of violence combined. So we work to end crime, to end violence, to end war, to end terrorism. And we should. But we need to also realize how many more of our sisters and brothers are suffering due to lack of clean water than to all of that violence combined. And it's just going to get worse. The United Nations estimates that by 2040, we will only have about half the drinking water in the world that we need. India is on track to be there by 2030. That's basically tomorrow. We'll have, it's estimated, between about 25 million up to more than 100 million water refugees, people who have to leave their homes due to issues of water. This is a global catastrophe, and it needs a global solution. We still have time. There is still beautiful hope, beautiful possibility as we change and adjust and adapt our ways of eating, of shopping, of dressing, of traveling, of working, of living, of agriculture, of irrigation. There's so many ways for us collectively to protect and preserve the water of this world. Everyone, every mother, every father around the world gets up every day to go to work so their children can have a better life, so their children can have a good education, beautiful opportunities, nice clothes to wear, gifts on holidays. And we should, it's wonderful. But the truth is, if there's no water for them to drink, or if the water is polluted, everything else is in vain. All the education, all the opportunity, all the material possessions are meaningless without water. Nothing can happen without water. No healthy lives or healthy societies or healthy worlds without water. So as we get up every day and go to work for our children and grandchildren, let us also commit to working 10%, 15% of our time to make sure that along with the education, along with the opportunity, along with the possessions, they also have healthy water to drink, healthy water to irrigate their farms and fields with, so there's healthy food to eat. And as we pledge and commit and work individually, we also need to pledge and commit and work collectively. And for that, we need a global water policy. COVID showed us very, very beautifully that none of us can really be safe or secure until and unless we are all safe and secure. It became abundantly obvious that security requires sustainability in order for it to be meaningful on any level. That none of us can be healthy, assuming we want to live not just in the four walls of our own home. None of us can be healthy until and unless our communities, our societies are also healthy. And in the same way, with water, the water that's polluted upstream is going to be polluted downstream. The riverbed that's dry upstream is going to be dry downstream. We are interdependent, interconnected. And for that, as we came up with global COVID policies, as the United Nations was formed for the very purpose of security, global sustainability. Well, there is no security and there is no sustainability without water. And so it's essential that we, in all of our countries, in all of our races, in all of our religions, demand of our leaders, in whatever capacity we have, that a global water policy is enacted. Without it, yes, we can all keep working individually, but the coherence, the collective coherence is essential. And so I pray that out of this World Unity Week, with our theme of do something, that we will understand, yes, we will do, and part of doing is we will make others do. And what we will make others do is also recognize and realize the importance of that. And with our collective voices and energy and resources, as the Declaration is written, as so many charters are written that we begin with, we the people. Well, we are the people. We are the people of this planet, this blue planet of water. Let us, the people, come together and create and demand the implementation of a global water policy across all our races, all our religions, all our colors, all our cultures, all our countries, together, joining our hands and joining our hearts. We can do it, and we must do it.
Very powerful from Sadhvaji Sarawati. Amazing message from the west coast of the United States and the Pacific Ocean there. Our next speaker is Dr. Anne Poelina, and my great honor to introduce Dr. Anne Poelina, who is a Nyakini Wara, Indigenous Australian woman who belongs to the Madhuwara, the lower Fitzroy River in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. Poelina is an active Indigenous community leader, human and earth rights advocate, filmmaker, and a respected academic researcher with a Master of Public Health and Tropical Medicine Master of Education, Master of Arts, Indigenous Social Policy, and currently Doctor of Philosophy, Health Science, with thesis title, Cultural Determinants of Indigenous Health and Wellbeing. What an extraordinary resume. Dr. Anne Poelina, it's a tremendous honor to have you with us in World Unity Week, talking about this subject of global policy, water first. Dr. Anne.
Mabubayan, nga nila wala Anne Poelina, ngayo imarawara manen, ngayo manda jara nyigana nganga, ngayo mabunguri and nganga, Uncle Max Harris, ngayo imarawara. So in my Nyikana language, I said, good evening. It's wonderful to be able to have a conversation with the world, and my ancient and sacred river is in the background watching. I also wanted to acknowledge Uncle Max and thank him for his leadership and his prayer leading into this ceremony. When I introduced myself, I said, Ngayu Imadowaramanan, which means I am a woman who belongs to the sacred river that you see behind me. Now, this is a relationship not of property rights, but a law of relationship as a guardian to protect under a law of obligation and kinship relationship, the sacred river that you see behind me. We believe that our river is a living, sacred, ancestral being. It not only has a right to life, it has a right to live and flow. In our region, we talk about living water systems. Water is alive. It is a living spirit. It holds memory, intergenerational memory. We also have a word in my language called Bugaragara. Bugaragara means the past, the present, and the future, fused into this moment in time in which we must act as human beings. And so beside all of the qualifications, my old people tell me, you sit on the ground, because when you sit on the ground, you have nowhere else to fall. So you must be humble when you walk your vibration across the earth. So one of the things that we also have in our language is a concept called wake up the snake. Now, wake up the snake means how do we wake up the consciousness of the people to bring the people with us on this dream that we have to form a global water law. So very, very important. How do we wake up the consciousness of the people, which is wake up the snake? Because when I look across the world, and last night I had a rare opportunity to share this platform again last night with some amazing Indigenous leaders from all over the globe. It was Indigenous Wisdom Path and World Water. And what we're saying as individual Indigenous people across this planet is that there is an ancient wisdom that really needs to be factored into how we deal with the complexity of right-sizing the planet. Water is such a critical thing in all of this. It is magic, it is alive, it holds memory, it's an energy system. And so we as human beings are totally reliant on our life and our well-being, on the well-being of our living water systems. So it's a very interesting conversation, because what we are saying as Indigenous people is that if we are going to right-size the planet, we need this gift of ancient wisdom coming free from Indigenous leaders across the globe, because we have been living with a water law from the beginning of time, of how we come from a system of earth governance, which is about earth jurisprudence, which is about recognition that when we are born as Indigenous people, we are given what we call in my language, a totem, a jarinj, a relationship with a non-human being, totem, animal, bird, fish, whatever the old people have born you into. And that teaches us as human beings that we live in a world of coexistence with our non-human family. And so when we're talking about transformative change, we must also think about our non-human family who make up the world in which we coexist. So the world that we come from is one that is saying that this ancient wisdom is so necessary for modernity. When I listened to the stories last night and heard the ongoing colonialism, invasion, unjust development on Indigenous people's lands and living waters, this is definitely time to wake up as a world citizens. So what we're saying is that capitalism has become the new colonialism. We are in the situation we are in because of the predatory elite. It is time to create peace with Indigenous people, with nature, and with our living water systems. We need to think how we become bonded in a moral contract with fellow global citizens, because there is not the political goodwill within our nation states to take us on the trajectory which is going to create the survival of our planet and humanity. So we as citizens, each and every one of us, and I say this and I sometimes get a little bit of flack from other Indigenous people, but I say we are all Indigenous to Mother Earth. When I listened to a story from the Vatican several months ago, and I heard the Laudato Si story, and one of the eminent scientists stood up and said, the pulpits are empty. It is no longer about religion. It is about how do we awaken the human spirit so that we can look at each other, human to human, and value and stop othering Indigenous people and bring us on the journey of how we are going to collectively wake up the snake. So the stories that Indigenous people have been framed around what I call first law, the values, the ethics, the codes of conduct for how we live in a world of harmony, balance, and peace. So this wisdom is coming as a gift from Indigenous people all over the globe. When you look at the IPBES the map from IPBES and IUCN, what they are saying is that these last bastions of global biodiversity are being held under the stewardship and guardianship of Indigenous people who are right now under such invasive, unjust attack from unjust development, which will destroy not only our life, but our lifeways and our living water systems. So we are at the front line of these developments. We are reaching out with our gift of reciprocity, of wisdom. We in Australia are the oldest living culture in the world. We come from a world of multidisciplinary science, of legal pluralism. We were the first farmers, the first scientists, the first archaeologists, the first builders of dams. So we bring this wisdom to wake up the snake because we believe that the time we have to right-size the planet is very, very short. We are already passing the 1.5 degree trajectory. And the message that I keep bringing back is the message from Laudato Si and from the Pope about how do we work together as global citizens, because it is no longer about religion. As I said, it is about the human spirit. How do we awaken each and every one of us? And so we live in a time where values, ethics are really under clash, where we are competing interests of what are we going to do? What are we going to commodify? How do we commodify water? How do we charge for it? How do we work out what the infrastructure's costs are going to be? How do we turn it into world water markets and trade it? Because water is the new gold. So it is time to wake up the snake. It is time to consider a global water law. And what we're saying is that we cannot create that water law without thinking about water justice, without thinking about distributive justice, without thinking about procedural justice, without, for the first time possibly in many of your lives, bringing in Indigenous wisdom with our collective wisdom so that we can look at how we sustain these living water systems, not just within our lifetime, but for the many, many, many generations who are still to come. So I say this story because it is all about story. It is about how we work together, how we work in a cooperation, in a unity pathway to share information, to make informed decisions. But at the end of the day, in order to move forward, what we need is peace with Indigenous people, peace with nature, peace with our living water systems. And then we know, as we have always known, that water is first. Kaliamabu, thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Anne Polina, and very, very stirring, and getting a round of applause and strong accolades for that great and tremendous comments and remarks. I think this is extremely exciting, bringing together these variety of viewpoints coming from diverse points of social engagements and endeavors. Dr. Shelley Ostroff, this is excellent to already off to a good start with these amazing speakers. And we're going to now hear, it's interesting, Dr. Anne Poelina, you mentioned Laudato Si. Yesterday, we had the 6th anniversary celebration here in World Unity Week with members of the Dicastery for Integral Human Development and the Laudato Si Action Platform, which is a very concrete initiative that's coming out of the Pope's encyclical from 6 years ago. So somehow all these things are connecting and being connected. And that ties into our next speaker, who is from the Vatican and the Holy See, Dr. Tebaldo. Dr. Tebaldo Vinciguerra serves the Holy See since 2011. He works on environmental issues, chiefly mining, energy, agriculture, water, and oceans, in the light of the social teaching of the Catholic Church. He worked initially as an official of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, and successively of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, created by Pope Francis. Dr. Tebaldo, it's wonderful to have you with us in World Unity Week in this very important conversation about global policy, water first, and we're very much looking forward to hearing your remarks, Tebaldo.
Thank you very much, dear Ben. Thank you to all the organizers and all the speakers. It's wonderful to be with you. This is really a very inspiring gathering. Warm regards of peace to all of you from the Vatican. Indeed, it has been very eloquently said and explained, water is life. And continuing this reflection from a religious point of view, I may add that water is a blessing. Let us think about cleansing, about purification, about baptism, about water as involved in the creation of God, in the creation from God of all the environment at the beginning of the Bible. Water is a gift. Are we able to treat it as a gift we received? It is not so obvious. One of the principles of the social teaching of the Catholic Church is the universal destination of goods. Do we really believe that water has such a universal destination? This means a universal destination for the whole human family and for all the generations that will follow, and also for the environment. Do we have this vision? Are we journeying towards its realization? Mentioning economics, we could consider maybe water and chiefly springs or sources of fresh water, but also maybe oceans as commons. And I do not believe that there is some kind of fate as if we were doomed that commons must end in a tragedy. Yet we need to care for them. And policy are useful to protect and to guide the local stewards, the protectors, those who care at local level. Then immediately we understand that a global policy necessarily involves the challenge of local involvement, of local commitment, of local protagonists, communities, tribes, municipalities. It is this principle of subsidiarity, which is so important in the Catholic social teaching, but also outside. I may add that water, this has been also said before, water is peace. Communities together can use the same well. This is so clear in the Bible. If you have an enemy or a competitor, he may be your rival. You may have a rivalry against him. River is the other bank of the river. So the river is separating two groups. He is your rival. Yet a river is also the first element that justifies the building of a bridge. A bridge, and the bridge is the wheel of creating a path, of creating unity. Keep in mind that another name of the Pope is Pontiff. He who in the past made bridges, bridging the gap, bridging the banks. How important was as a symbol for ancient cities to have a bridge. Water has memory. In the Bible, we read about, this is the well of Jacob, of the ancestor. It is my well, it is his well. Water has memory. We have in mind right now endocrine disruptors and persistent pollutants. Water has memory. It carries the memory of our brothers and sisters without a proper access to drinking water, for drinking, for cooking, for hygiene, for sanitation. Global policy, it is about reaffirming, promoting, implementing this human right to water and sanitation. More than 2 billion people still now in the 21st centuries face daily problems about drinking water and or access to sanitation. Even in healthcare facilities, even in schools, we must act. It is an issue of responsibility. Human rights stems from human dignity. We should not only consider that human dignity is tarnished or endangered when you are poor, marginalized, wounded, thirsty, exploited. Of course, but not only. Even if you could do something better, but you refrain from doing it. If you could stop exploiting, but with cynicism, you continue exploiting. If you could develop a different businesses, but you prefer to continue the previous polluting business. If you could stop ruining water, but you continue ruining water, your human dignity is also endangered because of your choices, because of your behavior. So global policy indeed is about healthy institutions at all levels that can address all the challenges mentioned by previous speaker and that will be also addressed by the next speakers. Yet, policy, institutions, good laws, access to justice, all this is not enough. Global policy needs our culture, our legends, our cosmovision. Global policy needs education. Can we educate ourselves and above all our children about contemplation, being amazed by water, oceans, rain and ice caps, to study it? If you study, if you understand the river, the drop irrigation, if you study, you may love. If you love, then it is easier to care. And in the framework of education and culture, I may add we are thirsty for more feminine wisdom, feminine knowledge at all levels. And global policy needs also the support, the motivation of genuine religious values, genuine religious text, scriptures, wisdom. Otherwise, why should I care? Not so obvious to put the other first. I will quote a sentence from the encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti, published in October by Pope Francis. Those who enjoy a surplus of water yet choose to conserve it for the sake of the greater human family have attained a moral stature that allows them to look beyond themselves and the group to which they belong. So, to look beyond themselves. How marvelously human. The same attitude is demanded if we are to recognize the rights of all people. So let's go in this direction. Otherwise, the risk, and I conclude, the risk is an unhealthy predatorial trend, grabbing of water for the short-term benefit of a few influential groups, the commodification threat, which has been explained. But water is life. Thank you very much, and may God bless all of us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tebaldo. Thank you so much for those wonderful comments, and very much in harmony with the messages we're hearing from this esteemed and diverse panel. We're going to go on now and hear some remarks from Bobby Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., and he has sent in a message as well via a video. So just give me a moment to click that up, and Mr. Kennedy, he will be with you soon. Let's get this opened up. Wonderful. So, video clip. Okay, here we go. Of course, I should read out Robert's bio. Just bear with me. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. For over 3 decades, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been one of the world's leading environmental advocates. He's the founder of Waterkeeper Alliance, the umbrella group for 300 local waterkeeper organizations in 34 countries that track down and sue polluters. Under his leadership, Waterkeeper has grown to become the world's largest clean water advocacy organization. It is indeed an honor to have him as part of this panel in World Unity Week. So let's hear from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robert Kennedy. I'm very, very sorry that I can't be there with you today. I want to thank Jerome Bromberg, who is my friend and my role model, my hero, for putting together this convocation and for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I started working on water issues when I went to work in 1986 for a group of commercial fishermen on the Hudson River. And these were people who did not look at the waterway as a treasure that should be put out of reach of human beings. They were people who were working in the water. They were standing in waders up to their waists, sometimes with mud, with nets. They were wet, they were dirty, and the waterway was part of their recreation. It was their livelihood. It was, in many cases, their property values. It was their culture and enjoyment. They had the kind of relationship that all of us need to have with the waterways and with nature at large. One of the things that I learned from them is that we're not protecting our rivers, our streams, and waterways so much for the sake of the fishes and the birds. We're protecting it for our own sake because we recognize that nature is the infrastructure of our communities. And that if we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, as a nation, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we need to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those assets that cannot be reduced by their nature to private property ownership, but are the assets of the entire community, what we call the commons or the commonwealth or the public trust assets. These are, for many years we've heard wealthy polluters and corporations and many of our most powerful political leaders tell us that we have to choose between economic prosperity on the one hand and environmental protection on the other. And that is a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy. If we want to measure the economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, over the long term, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do what the big polluters are and the powerful vested interests often ask us to do, which is to treat our rivers and waterways as if they were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy, and we can make a few people rich by impoverishing the rest of us. But our children are going to pay for our joyride, and they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes and poor health, huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time and that they'll never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. It's a way of loading the cost of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children. And one of the things that I've done over the past 40 years or so of environmental advocacy is to constantly go around and to confront this argument that an investment in our environment is a diminishment of our nation's wealth. It doesn't diminish our wealth. It's an investment in infrastructure. The same as investing in telecommunications or road construction. It's an investment that we have to make if we're going to ensure the economic vitality of our generation and future generations. And we're not protecting the environment just for the rivers for their own sake, but because we recognize that they enrich us culturally and spiritually and economically, but and particularly spiritually, I would say, because they connect us to the land, they connect us to the 20,000 generations of human beings who were here before there were laptops. They give context to our community, and they connect us ultimately to God. And God talks to human beings through many, many vectors, through each other, through organized religions, through the great books of those religions, through art and poetry, and music and literature, but nowhere with such grace and joy and texture and precision as through nature. And it's not an accident that all of the great religions in human history, the central epiphany always occurs in the wilderness. Buddha had to go into the wilderness to sit under the Bodhi tree in order to experience enlightenment and nirvana for his first time. Moses had to go to the wilderness of Mount Sinai to see the burning bush for his first conversation with God, and then to get the commandments. Christ had to spend 40 days in the wilderness in order to discover his divinity for the first time. Muhammad had to go to the wilderness of Mount Hira on a camping trip with his family, wrestle an angel in the middle of the night to have the first surahs of the Quran squeezed out of him. And Christ's mentor was John the Baptist, who lived in a cave in the Jordan Valley. He baptized Christ in the place that I visited with Jaron on the River Jordan. He ate grasshoppers, locusts, and honey of wild bees. And all of it, and that contact with nature was what gave him that clear expression of God's will. The word wisdom means the knowledge of God's will. And so many of our great prophets throughout history have had to go into the wilderness to get that kind of clarity. And all of Christ's parables came from the greatest ones, came from nature. I am the vine, you are the branches, the mustard seed, the little swallows, the scattering of the seeds on the fallow ground. And this is true with all the great rabbis, the great prophets of Israel, and all the other religions. They got that clarity. They had that direct conversation with God by going into nature. And for most human beings, we're now an urban race. And for most of us, the only access that we have to wilderness is our experience with local rivers. Almost every city is on a river. And how we treat that river is really an emblem of the value and the worth and the values and the idealism of our civilizations. Are we treating the commons as something that belongs to everybody, the rich and poor alike, to all races, to all genders? Are we making sure that they have access to it? Are we making sure that nobody is allowed to privatize the commons? No nation, no individual, no corporation. That they're always kept in the hands of the people, and that all the people have that access, not only to creation, but the conversation it allows with our Creator. So I want to thank Jaron for understanding that our role here is to be gentle, to speak truth to power, to be peaceful, but also to be persistent in advocating that we not engage with policies that commoditize God's green earth, and that we make sure that the goods of nature, and particularly our rivers, are available to all people at all times, because that's where we go to find God, and that's where we go to find common purpose and commonality. Thank you, Jaron, and thank to all of you.
Excellent. Excellent. Powerful comments and remarks from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A brilliant explanation there. And so we're now moving on to our next speaker, and amazing to see the quality and the depth here that's been represented from so many different voices and saying such deeply resonant things with each other. It's clearly this is a subject of enormous not only importance, but whose time has come. Juanita Ariza Guzman is a human and environmental rights defender, the founder and co-director of the National Water Network and the International Cantologua Network. Juanita is also the initiator of the Environmental Responsibility Communication Strategy of the Colombian Senate. Juanita, it's wonderful to have you with us in this amazing panel of global policy, water first. Welcome.
Well, thank you all for being here together, keeping on celebrating the importance of the right of the water. And I send you a great, great hug and my best wishes to each one of you for the work that we all do can be fulfilled and can be accomplished for the sake of the world and the nature also. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to be here with you today. Here is pretty early, but I am really, really honored to have the opportunity to join you, to hear and to recall all of these experiences on about what the water mean to each one of the different cultures that the Mother Earth has emerged. In this sense, here in Colombia, we have several originary people and indigenous cultures, but also we have a huge cultural diversity and mixture coming from the Afro people, the people also from the countryside, and also the rural and the natural zones of the country are really huge, and there is where the majority of the people lives. And here we are the second country in mega biodiversity richness, and the sixth country in the world with water welfare. So in this term, Colombia has a huge responsibility to protect our sources of water, since we have more of the 72% of the paramounts of the world, which are the sacred lands that our indigenous people have protected for millenniums. And we have the sources of the water that I called you all to rejoin the defense of the bodies of the water that we have in Colombia, because there are many conflicts that have happened here, and in the last 50 years we have had one of the longest armed conflict in the world with the guerrilla of FARC, but also we had some of the most violent governments of extreme right that have harm or different communities. But also some of you may have known about the peace process that we had here, and that was such an important event for the history of the humankind, because it allows us to understand that Colombia is a country that must build the peace, but also the peace with the nature. Because we understand, and we are right now one of the most dangerous countries to enhance and to develop the environmental defense activities. And this cannot keep on being like that. We need the world to understand that Colombia is a place of evolution and transition, but also is a place that needs the support of the entire world to give this step further, to be able to take advantage of our own richness and to overcome all of this violence that had taken place against the people, against the nature, and against our waters. That's why we here with the environmental movements, the different political parties and organizations and representatives at the Senate that really recognize this need. We are all working in the process of changing the paradigm of development and what it means in terms of the access to the social and environmental justice, but also to a new kind of development that can allow us to really transform and grow in harmony with the nature. That's why we have been making different political efforts, and at the council of the City Council of Bogota, we had the chance to develop the work for making the first climate change agreement and district law that has recognized and is the first district law of Latin America that has recognized the climate change emergency that we have. And the first article of this law is the ordering around the water. And it is my great honor to share you this because it's part of our work that we've done with the National Network of the Water, the World Water Law Alliance movement, and all of our friends that work for the waters, that we come to this impressive outcome to have this article. And I invite you all, my dear friends from all over the world, to take this reference and develop also in your different countries, cities, and districts. Call your authorities to have this ordering too. The water, the ordering around the water is one of the first principles to acknowledge the harmony with the nature in all senses. But also, I want to invite you all to know that we have to get more together in terms of the political action that we need. The global defense of the water has to be one of the, if not the principal cause and an issue that has to call and has to rejoin all of the different spiritual, political, economical, ecological, social diversity movements of the world, because the water is the first ancient, present, and future ordering aspect that will use to succeed as humankind. So, and also the social and environmental justice cannot just be a privilege for some, the access to the justice, but also the quality of the water and the disposability of the water at our different sources has to be a commitment of all of the governments. And I know that with your commitment and with all of our commitment and the possibility to rejoin and work together, we will have the opportunity to arrive to the water law and to arrive to the development of a new paradigm of development of economy and ecology that will allow us that will allow all of the humankind to enter into a new era. This is the message that I wanted to share with all of you, and know that here in Bogota, in Colombia, we are working, and we will be pleased to keep this connection with all of you so we can make this common goal a reality. Thank you very much, and we are all water.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you, Juanita Ariza Guzman, water rights defender from Bogota, Colombia. Very good, very strong. Very good to have you with us. We have a couple more speakers in this first round. Very eminent speakers, both of them, on this subject of protecting sacred and protecting nature. And our next speaker is going to be Linda Tucker. Great honor to have Linda again with us in World Unity Week. After being rescued by a Tonga medicine woman from a life-threatening encounter with the Pride of Lions in 1991, Linda Tucker gave up a career in international marketing to become a conservationist. She has dedicated her life to ensuring the flourishing of the critically endangered white lions, regarded as sacred animals, yet amongst the world's most targeted trophy. Founder of the Linda Tucker Foundation and Global White Lion Protection Trust, she and her team have successfully rewilded the white lions, securing vast protected heritage lands in the heart of their ancestral territories in UNESCO's Kruger-Two Canyons biosphere. Linda Tucker, it's delightful to have you with us again, and this very crucial and important subject for a global policy, water first. Welcome.
Ben and colleagues and dear friends, I'd like to begin by saying the Lions join me in uniting you, in sending love and courage, determination, unification in our efforts as a pride around the globe. The white lions in their endemic heartland guard water. They guard the central axis of the waterways of the earth through Africa, the Nilotic meridian, the meridian that runs under the great Nile River, is the same meridian guarded over by these majestic beings who have returned to our earth at a time of climate crisis in order to restore peace in our united efforts, peace through nature's principles. And our united efforts for water are central to our efforts for earth. So they combine with me now in a message of unification and love for all of you and your efforts of great courage. So the project that I've dedicated my life to over the last 3 decades has been to ensure the protection of their sacred natural site, which is one of the organs of our earth, a pulsing heart of the animal kingdom in the epicenter of UNESCO's Kruger Canyons biosphere. There, the lions guard water. So there are 2 main waterways we work with. The river that feeds the entire ecosystem, the North-South River, in alignment with the Nile, and the East-West River, called the Simbavati River, which means the place where the star lions came down. And that flows into our greatest natural park, called the Kruger National Park. What happens here affects the country. And so we've been involved in unified efforts with other conservation groups to protect the North-South River from industrialized farming plans in the middle of our ecosystem. At the present time, those are going to our High Court. And with regard to the East-West River, the sacred river of the White Lions, we've been working collaboratively and with some people identified here. I thank Gideon Brumberg for his guidance on the projects he's been involved in, supporting us in Africa. So here we have an expert from Israel supporting the united efforts in Africa for water. And it's very encouraging, the vision that is being implemented on this river for regenerative farming that will ultimately protect the river for future generations. So I had the opportunity to meet with our environmental minister last week, and I pointed out to her that there are existing models for regeneration that governments can call upon and move from the exploitative to the regenerative methodologies that are already proving themselves in various waterways around the planet today. When government is ready to embrace that and recognize that there are funding models that will support that as well, we have made inroads into the new paradigm conservation methodologies that are based on the ancient way. So having worked in conservation over a period of 3 decades now, I can truly say that while conferences, UNESCO conferences, the IUCN, these big conglomerates that position themselves here to support conservation efforts are significant, but the real shifts take place on the borders, on the outskirts of these big global summits, where our indigenous nations unite to do prayer for waters, as we have done in Global Unity Week. That is where nature hears our deepest hearts. And today, being the full moon, we know the full moon has a direct relationship with our oceans and with water. Our united efforts are being heard by the Great Mother, knowing that nature herself is claiming dominion over the earth. That is where we can rest our hearts in our unified efforts and know that we will ultimately be successful. I thank each and every one of you the organizers of this event, that individually for your efforts united at this time, they will be successful. Love to you all.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda Tucker. It's always such a delight to have you with us and feel the spirit and soul of you and the lands and the lions that you are standing for and representing. It's wonderful to have you with us. It feels very empowered at this time. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And yes, a beautiful full moon shining on our earth. Our final speaker before we then go into, I think, what I'm also very, very excited about, and the last round where we get to the hows and the whats. But this really is the visionary. Oh, someone's trying to call me. Not good timing. This really is the visionary for today's panel. And while I just turn off my notification, Shelley, the visionary for today's panel is Dr. Shelley Ostroff. And it was really Shelley and a partner, Jan Golding, who have been such extraordinary advocates and brought through the World Water Law. And this panel is also one of Shelley's amazing visions. Dr. Shelley Ostroff is a planetary activist, leadership consultant, social architect, and writer. She's the founder of Together in Creation, Codes for a Healthy Earth, 7 Days of Rest, Global Alliance for a World Water Law, and other initiatives dedicated to the healing and replenishment of the planet and all its inhabitants. She works with a holistic, whole system approach to individual, collective, and planetary healing. Shelley, it's wonderful to have you with us. And what an extraordinary panel you and Gidon and the organizers have brought together. It's very, very significant, and we're looking forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you all for being here and for everybody's amazing, important work for water, for all of life. Working for water is working for life. And it's an extraordinary opportunity today because it's the 24th of June, and on the 24th of June last year, in the midst of World Unity Week, we launched a proposal for the World Water Law. And now, a year later, much has happened. The Global Alliance for the World Water Law is forming. And before I say any more, I'm just going to invite Ben to share a little video that we prepared about the World Water Law, because this is a vision for water first, global policy in very practical ways, very uncompromising ways, and ways that get to the root of all our current crises and make common sense. So Ben, oh, great, thanks.
We are water.
We, citizens of Earth, call for and commit to working together for the immediate and universal protection of all water.
As the first vital step towards global cooperation for effective worldwide social and ecological healing.
The World Water Law requires the uncompromising protection and restoration of all natural water sources, watersheds, aquifers, lakes, wetlands, estuaries, and oceans.
The rewilding of ecosystems necessary for the restoration of the planetary water cycle.
The guaranteed free access of all humans and animals to the natural uncontaminated water.
The World Water Law holds all governments, corporations, communities, and individuals fully accountable for their impact on all waters everywhere.
This one law serves as a unifying foundation for all governments and citizens to work together with community-led wisdom and stewardship councils in ways that effectively serve the health and vitality of the whole.
The World Water Law provides an essential foundation for aligning human laws with the original laws of nature.
This global initiative honors the many water guardians around the world
who have dedicated their lives to the protection and reverence of water on behalf of all life.
Join the Global Alliance for a World Water Law.
And add your voice to make the World Water Law a global reality. Together, we rise for water.
Together, we rise for all of life.
We rise together with the tide. Water's law now must preside. We are water.
So this little video is an offering to the world to say, here is an opportunity to unite for real global policy at the root level that gets to the foundations of all our challenges and all of our solutions. Over the last years, and specifically over the last year, I have become more and more aware of how critical the water situation is on the planet. This is not a joke. This is, people are dying every day, both because of lack of water and because they are protecting the water. And water has become a commodity like gold on the stock exchange. The foundation of life, the foundation of health is being undermined on a daily basis. And we may have thought that the problems were out there, but we now know that even in the luxurious opportunity to have tap water running in our homes, most of tap water is toxic. And so we have violated water at source. And we are now seeing the dramatic effects of this foundational violation of life and of the act of living out of reverence with nature. So the World Water Law works on many different levels, and it says a couple of things. First of all, it's a citizen-led initiative. We are all policymakers. Each and every one of us make policy every day with our consumer behavior, with who we vote for, and with the ability that we have to use our citizen role in service of life or to wait for someone else to do it. And it's clear that we can't wait for anyone else to do it. Our systems are immensely compromised. And even though there are good people in the different institutions, there are also processes at work which are abusive, greedy, and sinister, to say the least, that are undermining life for immediate benefit and taking away the fundamental right, not only of humans, but of all of life to flourish. And I want to acknowledge Linda Tucker and the White Lions for their impact on all the work that I've done, including this World Water Law, which has really shown how to expand our concept and our language from a very human-centered way of looking at the solutions and at the problems to an eco-centered one, because even if we desalinate the water and a few more people are able to have access to water temporarily, when we're cutting down the forests, when we're contaminating the water, when we're undermining the biodiversity and taking away the rights of water to live in its fullest radiant manifestation, we are on a suicidal track, and that track is a trajectory which is happening very fast. The good news is that there are solutions. The solutions actually lie outside of the mainstream solutions that are being offered us in very compromised ways. And I think in order to transform, to create global policy water first, it means that we have to change our language, because these long-term goals of that leave leeway for the polluters, for the commodifiers, for those who are profiteers to continue their action and to continue the virus in the system, which is this fragmentation of life. We can no longer work with long-term goals and believe that someone is going to take care of it. What we need now is clear action that stops the commodification and the toxification of water at source. And the way to do it is first and foremost to put accountability into the system. Everything is done through lack of accountability, through lack of transparency, and by creating dependent citizens who believe that our authority is outside of themselves and we have to wait for someone to actually take care of us. So putting accountability into the system, which is the fourth aspect of the World Water Law, changes everything. And as citizens, we have the capacity to unite now and to insist on having absolute transparency about what is happening to our waters everywhere, and to call for and ensure, to become the leaders that are going to make the change, to ensure that our waters are being protected, revered, and that all humans and animals have direct, guaranteed access to natural, uncontaminated water. Only when all of life has access, is in balance again, can we all thrive as an interconnected living system. It's clear that we cannot believe that our neighbors can have polluted water and we can have clean water, that we can have water at the expense of any other part of our interconnected living body. And so this understanding of interconnectedness, this understanding of whole system health at source, which means when we violate water at source, we create a domino effect and none of us can be healthy. When we heal water at source, we create a cascading effect of revitalization everywhere simultaneously. So the vision is that human beings rise together all over the world simultaneously with alliances to bring in all the extraordinary solutions. That's the good news, because all the solutions exist. The people who know how to live in right relationship with water have the answers. It's about putting them at the center table and letting them lead the way. And many of these are the indigenous wisdom keepers. And instead of undermining the last bastions of biodiversity and sacred relationship with water and with the land, we should be protecting them and learning from them and building up those spaces, because those are the organs of the body, as Linda Tucker mentioned. So we cannot think about health when we do not when we do not restore the communication pathways of the planet. Water flows. And when we dam water, when we undermine the natural flow of water, we are impacting the health of the whole by cutting off the communication channels of water, which flows through all of us. And nature knows in its pristine way how to do that. So we have to also change our language about water and stop this reductionist language of calling water H2O in some vague scientific notion. Water, as has been so beautifully said here, is an intelligent living being, an ancient intelligence far beyond any human can imagine. And so how do we start to listen to water? We listen to those who have remembered how to listen to water, and we bring all of that knowledge to the table. And we create a water first policy, means creating water first education. We all need to relearn what it means to be water beings and become those full radiant water beings, which means that we need to also understand that any toxins in this extraordinary source substance is going to necessarily impact our consciousness, our bodies, our collective body. And so the World Water Law is an offering that says we don't have to reinvent the wheel. When we go back to common sense, we understand exactly what to do. It's hard to argue any of these fundamental principles. Any person who cares about water, who cares about life, who cares about future generations will say yes to it. And one of the discerning principles for our leaders is to ask them, do you care about future generations? And if so, you may have the right to lead. And if you do care about future generations, do you sign off on this foundational law? This is a discerning principle regarding who can lead us today. It starts with the World Water Law and the ability to say, yes, we commit to making natural, uncontaminated water a priority for all beings and allowing water to return to its most radiant manifestation. So I give thanks to this opportunity. Thank you, Ben, for creating the space to put this on the table and to call on all of us to really shift our language and bring in an uncompromising way of dealing with water, because compromise is that which fragments the system, and nature doesn't compromise and health doesn't compromise. And when we allow any toxins into the system, it means that we're creating a virus that is going to spread throughout. So I'm very grateful to all of you, and look forward to coming together with a global alliance for a world water law across boundaries of culture, religion, age, and let's make this happen in the shortest amount of time possible. No long-term goals. Right now, we stop the violation of water at source.
Bravo, bravo. Very good, Dr. Shelley Ostrov. Thank you. Excellent, powerful, impassioned, and wonderful presentation. I'd like to invite the speakers up to come and join the circle with these last 20 minutes that we have, and just to come up, I'll let you do that, Brother Jan, and bring our speakers up if they would, Anne and Gidon, come on speaker for this final 15-20 minutes. And we really want to go around in the circle and just for a couple of minutes each. How do we go forward from here? There is tremendous agreement here. There is overwhelming agreement, even though we're at very different points of dealing with water issues in different levels, of different frequencies and different environments in different ways, and different political containers. So how can we, Dr. Anna Poelina, what can be the next step? And we'd love to hear your reflections as to the tremendous amount of synergy, intergenerational, cross-cultural, international agreement, including powerful presentations from Sadhviji and Robert Kennedy, again, all on song here, singing the same song. How do we go forward? What do we do from here? How do we keep this momentum growing? And Dr. Anna Poelina, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah, no, pretty amazing stories. And I guess, as I said earlier, it's about these stories. So those stories around the world where we have global violation of water, particularly on those last bastions of Indigenous peoples, lands and waters, I think we need to look at these stories and look at how do we engage with these different projects globally and start to bring in our collective wisdom of how we start to deal with the complexity, because we're not just talking about one thing. From an Indigenous person's perspective, land, water, people are intrinsically entwined. And so I think there's a number of stories that were shared tonight, particularly Janita, myself, in terms of where we're seeing this violation occurring. One of the things in terms of where I live is that we have a pristine river system that is just about to become the largest man-made disaster in the world in terms of fracking a Canning Basin that's 500,000 square kilometers onshore and 100,000 offshore. So I think there are these global stories that Indigenous people have right around the world. And I think we need to look at them and target them in terms of how we can work with Indigenous people and co-design the strategies going forward. There's a lot of amazing work coming out of Laudato Si, particularly around the human development scoping work. So I think it's once again having some time to reflect on what we've shared tonight and start to look at the challenge of what Shelley has given us, which is the crisis is right now. So I think there's an opportunity. I think there is a spirit of goodwill amongst the people to start to look at how do we do this work. But there are amazing projects out there across the US, across Canada, across New Zealand, across Colombia, across Australia. So there is no shortage of supply of where the violation is occurring. What we need is now the mobilization of our citizens movement to look at how do we get this transformational change and invest in what just development should look like. Thank you.
Magnificent. Thank you so much, Dr. Anna Poelina. It's for those of us who haven't had the pleasure and privilege of meeting you before, I know it's we're very, very honored to be in touch with you. I must share this because land, water and people and the Indigenous story, it's too resonant not to take 10 seconds to show you this. Tomorrow, on World Unity Week, we have this story, the magic of Mungo, encounter 50,000 years of people, land and water, here with a very ancient story of people, land and water here on this continent. So That's going to be 7 a.m. Western Australia time tomorrow, and if you would like to join us. So just coming and building off that, Git, on your next in line, just as we go from square to square here, but in terms of what can we do next, there's again tremendous momentum energy. Dr. Shelley's opened the space here. How can we all come together and make sure that we can keep the ball and keep the momentum flowing?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone for such wisdom that's been shared this afternoon. I think that we need to work in parallel, and I think no one of us has the answer. We just need to do everything that we can at the same time with as much energy as we can possibly muster. So at the local level, there's just no shortage of organizations that are existing to join. I mean, I'm together with Robert Kennedy, a member of the Water Keepers Alliance, which is a global alliance of protecting waterways all over the world. So those of you that are not active in protecting your local waterways, please look at the website of Water Keepers International, and you'll see over 350 water keepers that are currently working day and night, most of them volunteers, to protect local water resources. And I think a really strong way of those of us that can use the law, and that's not available everywhere, unfortunately, there's a duty of care that does exist in many legal systems that we can utilize by going to courts to sue companies, municipalities, governments that are polluting. And I think that's the story that Robert Kennedy spoke of, and the success of cleaning up the Hudson, which was a filthy river when Robert Kennedy started his efforts. And today, fish are again breeding, and industry, the fishing industry is again live and healthy in the Hudson. At the regional level, the work of EcoPeace, I think, is an example. And Ben, you mentioned the Green-Blue deal that EcoPeace launched at the end of last year, at the end of 2020. That is the focus of our effort of helping to move forward on water first. And we're doing it through a climate entry point, because the climate crisis is primarily a water crisis, certainly in the dry areas of the world, such as the Middle East and North Africa. And so we're utilizing the climate crisis and the focus of the whole world this year in particular, as we move forward to Glasgow, to lobby our own governments and try to gain support champions for moving forward on water first. And we're trying to work closely with the Biden administration in the United States to support a water first approach in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. And if we're able to move forward on water first in Israel-Palestine, I think that will inspire so much of the rest of the world to also move forward first on water. And then finally, at the global level, I think that we have a need to also create institutions. So there is it was not an organization, there is a name called UN Water. It's not an organization. Water doesn't really have a home in the UN system. I think creating a UN water organization, like we have a UN organization for the environment, like we have a UN organization for peace, like we have a UN organization for food and agriculture. By creating a UN organization for water and empowering that organization with treaties like what is being proposed today by Shelley and others to have an international water law. That would create the institutional framework to move forward and enforce sound, practical water practice at the national level and at the global level. So let me leave it there for the moment.
The proposal of a UN agency dedicated to water strikes me as a fascinating one, worthy of more exploration. I wonder if any initiatives have been started already around that, but that's certainly something for us to continue to explore. Dr. Tebaldo, your closing comments would be welcome.
Thank you very much. And again, many, many thanks to all the speakers, all the colleagues in this panel. I feel that almost everything should be tried, everything should be promoted. Like a sun with all the actions out of the sun, or like a kind of circle where everything is connected with something else. Maybe also this is the challenge of integrality and interconnectedness. So what does it mean? Maybe not just many checkbox. I did this, I did the lawyer, I did the youth, I did the training, I did the filter. Not only checkbox, but also a common purpose. And a couple of speakers really raise the issue of purpose. So on the long term, why? What is the purpose? So here maybe two simple ideas. One would be clearly in the framework of education with youth, but also adults during a whole life. What is a meaningful life? As a man, as a woman here in this earth, the time you are alive, what kind of values are we inspiring? What kind of values are we transmitting so that we have a meaningful life? And then the laws, the business, the solutions can more easily be designed or fine-tuned according to that purpose. And the second idea is, again, I will use the image of the bridge. So we'll be bridging the gaps among silos. So facilitating the events, the careers, the projects, the institutions where the anthropologist speaks with the lawyer, with the teacher, with the engineer, with the expert in legends, with the local tribe, with the experts in chemistry, and so on. We need absolutely to have all these wisdom together. Thank you very much.
Brilliantly said, Dr. Tebaldo, and certainly one in this space where Indigenous wisdom and knowledge is connecting with science and faith-based and other interdisciplinary, youth, intergenerational, beautifully expressed, and certainly feels like that's essential. The diversity of any alliance is its strength. Juanita, it'd be great to hear from you and your comments, perhaps a little bit of reflection on what we've discussed today, and anything in closing about the how and the what of the way forward for a proposed world water law.
Well, thank you, Ben, and also thank you, Dr. Shelley, for the invitation, for being here with you. It's been a great pleasure. And what I feel is like last year, Shelley and Jan invited us all to participate at a panel called World Water Law, the World Water Law, no? Which when we first talk about that, no? And in that moment, we participated with great pleasure. And now that we are 1 year later, I see that the huge impact that it has had in all of us. And I believe that all of us have to keep the connection, keep the opportunity to speak together, to be able to develop the ideas that we are proposing now. And one of the ideas that come to my mind is that we should definitely create an international council of water. I think that with the representatives level that we have here, we could really find the main leaders of the water processes in each country, and with all of us, we should develop this council that could be a more formal, digamos, figure that could speak with the United Nations, as Dr. Gideon just mentioned. And another idea that I propose you is something that we also did here in Colombia. This year at the International Day of the Water, we made a public hearing at the Congress where we, set up the state of the matter at the 5th Commission of the Senate, which of course we all organized. And one of the commitments that we had from this public hearing was the development of the legal commission of water and biodiversity issues, which also was an idea of mine. So now, like this week, we finally had the meeting with different senators, and especially the president of the 5th Commission of the Senate, which we started the work to start the new commission, the new legal commission. So I think with these two figures, we could advance very, very much. So I invite you all to do the same, in each one of your countries, to talk with the most representative senators and congressmen and city councils, governors, social environmental leaders, and everyone who you think that is available, to build up these councils and work from the point of view of the governance of the water, which also has to be a principle. So that's my invitation. Let's continue the World Water Movement Law. Let's build the International Council of Water and national councils and commissions, so we can keep on strengthening the defense of the water.
Brilliant. Thank you, Juanita. Excellent work. And working at the local level, the national level, and the international level is very much what is required. That's tremendous to hear what you're already doing and what you're planning to do more. Linda Tucker, as we come towards the end of this extraordinary convening, it'd be great to hear from you the how and the what forward from here.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll be very brief. I think, this holistic view of how we approach it, shared by my colleagues, is the way forward. You can see that it will bring about the changes we envisage. And in that way, each of us, like a drop in the ocean of our united efforts, will carve the way forward. So perhaps just 3 things I could add to the wealth that's already been shared in these strategies, to reinforce that global alliances are the way forward. This is a new way of working, in my experience as a conservationist over 30 years. The last few years have really seen what collaborative efforts can achieve. And these laws need to be global laws, as well as local, as we've said. Perhaps what I can add is to remind us to assign accountability, to use Dr. Ostrov's term, assign accountability when it's due. So assign it largely to the big businesses and the industries who are causing the problem. So to give you a little micro example of that, in my project with our rivers that are being filled with baby nappies. I don't know what the term is in other cultures, but baby nappies that have contaminated our rivers. Instead of calling on local communities to understand the disaster, which must happen, we're creating a cultural initiative that exposes the big industries in their act of destroying our waters. So we'll be taking this cultural initiative to media and television, embarrassing the industries that have created the problem. I think many, attempt to deal with the problem without labeling as accountability. And finally, to say, of course, the indigenous knowledge systems are the key to the solution. And in the Worldwide Indigenous Peoples Charter, for instance, it makes it so clear that human law is and has to be subservient to nature's law, because we are dependent on nature. So reminding our policymakers at every turn that is where we're heading. Human law has to be subservient to nature's law. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Linda Tucker. Thank you, Linda Tucker. And just in closing, before we maybe hear final remarks from Dr. Shelley Ostroff herself, I'd love to bring Uncle Max Harrison up forward to share. Uncle Max, you were here yesterday with Rabbi Sotendorp, and you met Rabbi Sotendorp, and you were so passionate about water. You were talking about water with such a deep wisdom that I wanted to invite you to come back, and you've been here the entire 2 hours. I want to honor your deep listening to this, and thank you for being present with us. And I would just love to hear, maybe as we are coming towards the end of the time and some of our speakers may need to move to other commitments, but we would love to hear from you, your experience over the last 2 hours, and anything else you'd like to share as we start to close the circle.
Am I on?
Yes, you are, Uncle Max.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Look, it's been pleading for me to hear the fight for water, and what you talked about is this global unity, and that's the only way to go, and to get each indigenous group to have a couple of representatives, but we'll have to make that globally legal. You know, it has to be. It can't be just something that we're is going to form. It has to have an impact. So when we can get when some of the environmentalists is talking and demonstrating against the desecration of water, they can have someone to go to in country, and then that could be reported, and it's reported globally. Then I love that part of it. It's that I don't have to call it power, but it's that strength and unity that we need to have to stop the desecration of our lifeblood, which is water. And thanks for having me on for the last few hours in the last 2 nights. I enjoyed. It's my fight to have water free. It's my fight to have water clean, and it's very important to me as an elder. I remember when I was sent for water, and I had to go down to the river, and all I'd done was take a billy can down and dip it in the river and bring it back up, and my old uncle tipped it out. I'd done that twice, and on the 3rd time I went back down to the river, and I thought, why did he do that? Did I have that billy can full of water or half? And then I dug a hole in the sand and let the water come to me, and then I let that happen, and then I filled the billy can up, and I took it up to my old uncle, and he put it down, and he never tipped it out. That's when I knew that I was raping that river, just by going down and just taking it out of the river without asking spiritually and traditionally and mentally and physically. So thanks for having me on here, and thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. God bless.
No, thank you so much, Uncle Max. Thank you for being with us. It means a lot. And I hope we can stay connected. Let's find a way that we can share your contact details. I know you have some support there. So let's, before we finish completely today, make sure you stay for a moment. We'll catch your details, maybe connect you to Shelley and maybe even Dr. Anne. Paulina may be interested in staying connected to you as a great water guardian. Thank you. So Shelley, in closing, it's been an extraordinary few hours. I know you've worked on this very, very hard, sleepless nights from time to time to put it all together with support from Gidon and of course Jan there in the background. But just to close us, what are what's your final wishes?
First, I just want to express my deepest gratitude to Uncle Max for your wisdom and really helping us understand that it's not a technical matter. It's really a matter of consciousness and reverence as the foundation for moving forward. Secondly, just asking the question together of how do we make the World Water Law a global reality is the start to creative conversations that bring in the solutions. So inviting in those creative conversations of how do we make this. I know that when we ask the right questions, the right solutions come. So let's ask really the big questions of making this a global reality now. And the third is to invite people to a platform called www.worldwatercommunity.com, which we're launching today. There's a session in the Uniting for Water room, which will be a platform where we can have these conversations, meet across all cultures, sectors, and figure out how to do all of this simultaneously, globally, everywhere now. So blessings to everyone. So much gratitude to each and every one of you. And I look forward to our pathway together from here as we unite in service.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Ben.
I was just saying thank you, Shelley. Thank you to all of the panelists. It feels like a momentous beginning. Global policy, water first. Thank you, Dr. Anne. Thank you, Gidon. Thank you, Dr. Tebaldo, Linda, Juanita, Uncle Max, and of course, Shelley Ostroff, and to our guests who couldn't be with us, but would send, were so with us and so present, being Sadhvaji and Robert Kennedy. Wonderful.